Hi, do you want to get some top tips for doing your thesis? Top tips that have helped thousands of students just like you to successfully complete their thesis. Well, let us help you to successfully complete your thesis. Who are we? We are Thesis Upgrade. Thesis Upgrade is run by two accomplished academics. Sue Mulhall, that's me here in the photograph, and my colleague Mark Campbell. And this is Mark, this is his photograph. For over 2 decades, we have helped thousands of students to successfully finish their thesis. But don't just take our word for it. Listen to what our students say about us. Take John Power. He successfully completed his MSc in Innovation and Design. This is John here. And what did John say about Mark's supervision? He said, Mark's supervision helped me to get a distinction grade for my thesis, but more importantly, I was able to apply my research in my company, which led to a promotion. So we're helping our students do their thesis. What does that actually mean? Well, first of all, we need to help students recognize that a thesis, sometimes known as a dissertation, is an extensive piece of independent academic work. And over a period of time, you study a single topic in great depth. And that period of time could be 6 months, 9 months, even 12 months. And after that period of time, you produce a final document called a thesis. And typically, that is 5 distinct sections. It starts with an introduction, where you explain to the reader what you're doing, why you're doing it, and how you're going to do it. You then follow that introduction by a literature review where you critique relevant literature. The third section is usually a justification of the research approach that you're going to take and what data collection method you're going to use, why you're going to use it, and how you're going to use it. And once you've actually explained the data collection, you go out, conduct your fieldwork, you collect your data, and that collected data is then analysed and interpreted, and you present a summary of those findings to your reader. And your thesis then ends up with a conclusions and recommendations section. So for the past 2 decades, we've been helping students with their thesis. So what top tips have we gained from that assistance, and what top tips do we want to share with you? Well, top tips is an acronym. The T in the top stands for topic, the O for opening, the P for process. And when we look at the tips, T stands for thinking, I stands for investigation, P for procedure, and S for scholarship. So let's go through each of these top tips one by one. We start first off with your topic. So when we consider your topic, what we work with you to do is to help you select an appropriate topic. Now, your choice of topic usually emanates from an area you are familiar with. For example, your studies, your job, or your extracurricular activities. So you must ensure that your topic matches your interests, experience, and expertise. But you also have to take account of the fact that you will face obstacles along the way, and those obstacles can be in the form of resource constraints. For example, money, time, access to a research site, or consent from your participants and your respondents. So the first top tip is select a topic that's appropriate for you. Our second top tip revolves around the opening for your research. So when we talk about an opening, we recognize that your research can arise from a number of sources. First of all, through observation, or indeed a perceived problem in your job, for example, or your extracurricular activities. Or maybe you just want to find out more about an issue. Or possibly you've read a lot of literature and you've identified a gap in that literature that you want to explore. Or maybe you can visualize a number of alternative courses of action to your perceived problem, and you want to know, are there other alternative courses of action that you might want to take? So our second top tip is around making sure that you've identified an appropriate opening for your research. Our third top tip is the process that you should adopt to do your thesis. Now, we've already mentioned that your finalized thesis document has 5 distinct sections: your introduction, your literature review, your research methodology, your findings and analysis, and your conclusions and recommendations. But that final document is not how you actually do your thesis. You do your thesis in 10 distinct stages. So for example, the first stage is you develop a research proposal. Once you do that, you're able to search for relevant literature and critique that sourced literature. At that stage, you are able then to design a particular study and go out and do some fieldwork. When you do your fieldwork, you collect some data. You then analyze and interpret that data, and then you're in a position to discuss and present your findings. And only at that stage can you top and tail your thesis. And you top and tail your thesis by writing up your introduction and your concluding sections to your thesis. But you're not finished yet, because you need to finalize your overall thesis, checking to make sure there's a logical structure and flow to your arguments, your referencing is appropriate, and you've made possible amendments and revisions to ensure that logical flow. And only at that stage are you ready to prepare for your viva and presentation. You may have to present your results and defend your research to, for example, an ethics committee. So what we've looked at there is the top part of top tips: your topic, your opening, and your process. Now let's look at the tips part of top tips. So the T stands for thinking. And when we talk about thinking, what we're really talking about is critical thinking. So doing your thesis, you focus your mindset on critical thinking. And that can be done in a number of ways. For example, when you've collected your data, you need to ensure that any evaluation and synthesis is done at a very high level. You also need to make sure that you've made an input to the literature around your topic, and that you highlight to the readers the contribution that you're making to your particular topic. Critical thinking also involves explaining why your findings are different or possibly similar from those of other authors or scholars. And last but not least, critical thinking also involves justifying how the answers to your research questions or your research hypothesis compare with what others have found. So that's thinking. Our next top tip is investigation. Now, when you do investigation for your thesis, what we're talking about is planned investigation. Planned investigation carried out in a systematic way. And that has several aims. For example, you are establishing new facts and information about specific phenomena. And you do that by designing a study to address certain research questions or to test certain research hypotheses with an eventual goal of producing credible results. And credible results must be valid and reliable. And you produce those results for a variety of communities that may potentially be interested in your research. For example, the academic community, or practitioners, or industry, or even policymakers. So the I in tips is around investigation. Our next top tip relates to the procedure. Now, we've already mentioned that we have a process of 10 stages to do our thesis. But we also have a checklist of procedures. And there are 9 distinct steps on this checklist. We need to locate your research in its appropriate topical domain, set out your understanding of relevant issues, formulate your research questions or research hypothesis, design a plan to find out answers to what you want to know, rationalize the methodological choices you intend to make, select suitable collection methods to gather your data, analyze and interpret your data, generate results that contribute to your topic, and explain your research to others. So there are 9 distinct things you need to tick off on this checklist in relation to procedures. And last but not least, our top tip revolves around scholarship. So when we talk about scholarship, what we're really talking about is creating a complex academic tapestry. And in this tapestry, you're weaving strands of supported argument together, and those strands come together to form a golden thread of scholarship. Now, what do we mean when we say a golden thread of scholarship? Well, there are 4 distinct strands to this golden thread of scholarship. The first strand is the veracity. The veracity of your scholarship refers to the trustworthiness of what you've done and the reliable and valid data that you're producing to create credible results for your audience. The second element of scholarship is format. You need to ensure that the format of your thesis adheres to typical academic protocols in addition to your own institutional guidelines, usually found in some form of thesis handbook that you'll be provided by your supervisor. The third strand of this golden thread of scholarship is coherence. We need to ensure a cogent, logical argument runs through all your thesis and that there are substantiated arguments based on research. And last but not least, scholarship involves style. When we talk about style, we talk about writing style. You need to ensure that you're writing in an appropriate academic manner. It also refers to the fact that you need to attribute and cite your sources, your references, and adhere to the appropriate referencing style that your institution wants, for example, APA or Harvard. So our final top tip for thesis success is scholarship. So what we're saying to you after 2 decades of helping students successfully complete their thesis is that there are 7 top tips to complete a thesis. You need to select the correct topic, you need to ensure that you've an appropriate opening for your research, and you need to go through a 10-stage process. Additionally, make sure your thinking is critical, your investigation is planned and structured, you have a checklist procedure with 9 things you need to tick off, and that you adhere to the protocols of scholarship. So there are 7 top tips for your thesis success. Another top tip we want to say to you is, why not go out and buy our practical guide, Doing Your Thesis, a practical guide written by myself, Sumal Hall, and my colleague, Mark Campbell. It covers everything you need to know from start to finish to successfully complete your thesis. It talks about doing a research proposal, your introduction, your literature review, your research methodology, your data collection and analysis, the discussion and presentation of your findings, and your conclusions and recommendations. And it also gives you a bonus section by providing advice for your viva and presentation. But let's not take our word for it. What do our students say about our guide? Well, Martha, who we've helped, and here's Martha here in a photograph, she said that our publications are fantastic. I really loved doing your thesis, a practical guide. Thanks so much for your guidance with my thesis. I'm very proud of what was achieved with your help. So let us help you. Why not visit our shop at www.thesisupgrade.com and get more useful tips to successfully complete your thesis.